participated. So we're delighted for those of you who are here, and welcome. My name is Lynn Gangone. I'm Dean of the University of Denver's Women's College, and this is, I believe, the third in a series of 4 leadership salons that the college is doing to align with the first presidential debate. And if any of you have been near the University of Denver campus recently, you will see that we are almost ready for that event to happen. We have our perimeter fence up. We have lots of new fancy signs around campus. The city has paved all the streets around campus, and I'm really happy about it. As someone who drives on those roads regularly. And I also have to say, because anyone affiliated with the University of Denver community has gotten a lot of emails asking if there are tickets, and we have all erred on the side of allowing our students to be a part of that historic event. And so any of us who are affiliated with the campus, no matter what your rank or what your donation, you're in a watch party with the rest of us, and the students are the ones who are at the event. So let me first start by inviting Michelle Tyson to talk a little bit about the college and to pitch you on why we think the Women's College is the right place for a woman who wants to be a leader to be. And then I'll come back in and introduce the panel and our salon. So Michelle, I'll turn it over to you.
All right, thank you. Welcome. I just wanted to take a minute to bring the Women's College into the community and talk to you a little bit about who we are at the Women's College, the students that we serve, and the kind of women that we are able to help transform into leaders while they're with us. I invite you to take a moment to think about the women that are in your lives. Think about your mothers, your sisters, your neighbors, people that you share a hobby with, people that are in your community. And I invite you to think about any of those women who are missing their college degree. Maybe it's because they never started a degree. Maybe it's because they started and they never had a chance to finish. These are the different women that we have at the Women's College. It could be a woman that you know that just returned from serving her country, a woman who is getting ready to graduate high school this year and maybe doesn't know where she's going to be going to college just yet. She might have dreams of going off and trying something new across the world or across the nation, but for whatever reason, her family needs her here and she needs to stay in the Denver community. She can become a leader at the Women's College. It might be a woman that you know who started out at community college years ago, perhaps never had a chance to finish her degree. She perhaps gave up time to raise a family, get married, contribute to her family. She never finished her degree. She's got great leadership skills, and she needs to hone in on those a little bit. She could do that at the Women's College. It could be a woman you know who's in community college right now. She's got great potential. She really wants her education. She needs to transfer someone for a bachelor's degree. She could do that at the Women's College as well. The students at the Women's College are a variety of ages. The newest term that we've been throwing around is their intergenerational classrooms. We have our youngest student this year starting with us, who's 17, although she will be 18 by the end of September, so she's probably 18 now. And every time we say we have a 17-year-old, she says, "No, stop saying I'm 17, I am 18. And our oldest student that joined us this past quarter is 60 years old. So as you can see, we serve a breadth of students and different life experiences. The women that you know in your lives that need a degree can thrive at the Women's College. There's a couple things that we put out on your chairs. One is a referral card, which at our last leadership salon, someone pointed out that a referral card is pretty much like handing somebody a $500 scholarship just by being here today. So if you know somebody in your community that you think would be a great student at the Women's College, tell us about them. Fill out this card and leave it up at the front. Tell us about them, and they can have a $500 scholarship in the quarter that they start. On the other side, we have Visit Us cards, which I think if they're not on your chairs, they are out in the front. This is for you to tell them about us. We have monthly information sessions each month, and we encourage students any prospective student, to come hear a little bit about us and see if we're the right fit for them. I notice that there's a couple of our students in the audience right now, and if you wouldn't mind, would you just stand up for just a moment so we can acknowledge who our Women's College students are? Wonderful. Thank you. And I see some faculty members as well, and some staff members, so shout out to you all as well. But as you can see, the women that we serve in the Women's College are leaders in their communities, and they are going to become leaders even more once they have their college degree. So again, think of a woman you know. Think of how she can thrive at the Women's College. Share our names with them and share their names with us. Thank you so much.
event is question mark, women, race, and politics. And as I said, it's the third in a series of salons that the college is doing in conjunction with the presidential debate. We wanted to bring men and women into conversation about the great issues of the day. And as a women's college, we want to elevate our women thought leaders in this community. So often, we don't see women, and a variety of women, speaking out on the issues of importance. And so while we are always welcoming our men of goodwill into the conversation, we want to make sure that this podium is held by women leaders, women thought leaders. And we have 4 of those here today. It's always, I always have deep gratitude to the women who agree to be on these panels. This is not an insignificant commitment of time. And so thank you to each of you for doing this. The bios of our speakers are at your place because we believe that the important thing is to have the conversation. But let me just go down the line here. Representative Angela Williams, Paulina Olvera, Monisha Merchant, and Jade Villalpando. These are our 4 panelists today, each extremely competent, bright, exceptional women in their own right, who are here to talk about a very complex topic, women, race, and politics. Before we go to the conversation, I'm a bit of a data fiend, and so I want to give you some data to consider the importance of this conversation today. And also plug a salon that's happening on October 22nd. Our college's research team, led by our professor, Tiffany Lennon, and a group of our students, are conducting the 2nd edition of a national study called Benchmarking Women's Leadership, which was originally produced by the national organization, the White House Project. And October 22nd, we will be debuting the initial findings of that study with our faculty, our students, and Tiffany Dufu, who is the president of the White House Project out of New York City. So the data you're hearing today are actually a bit of a sneak preview of that study. And the reason it's not necessarily a sneak preview is because the data around women in politics has really not changed. So let me tell you this. First of all, the U.S. has fallen from 71st to 79th among 189 countries with a proportional percentage of women in national legislatures. We are going down. We are not going up. At the federal level, women continue to hover about 17% in Congress. And I heard Gina Davis, the actor, speak recently, and I think she gave us hundreds of years to gain parity in Congress if we continue at this rate. Today, women of color make up less than 5% of the House and hold no seats in the Senate. Women of color constitute 4.5% of the total of 535 members of Congress. Many of you may remember Senator Carol Moseley Braun. She's the only woman of color to serve in the U.S. Senate, and her term ended in 1999. In state legislatures, women have made little progress in the last decade. In June of 2009, women held 24% of the seats in state legislatures, only 2 percentage points more than a decade earlier. Women comprise 22% of all state legislators, and Colorado has been a leader with 40%, and Vermont with 38.9%. And we currently have been the state that has had the highest percentage of women serving in the state legislature. Currently, there are 6 female governors, and of the 43 states that elected lieutenant governor, 11 of them elected a woman. That sets the stage for this conversation. Women still are not being elected to political office. We are seeing more women run for political office. And the percentage of women of color is even smaller than what we see in that aggregate. So today, we have an opportunity to hear from these 4 exceptional leaders. We're going to talk generally about the influence of gender and race and what that influence has on the national political landscape. I think each of these women will talk about some of their personal stories in terms of how it's been for them to run for office, how it's been for them to consider those runs, what has happened in the context of being out in the community. I want to hear from them, I'm sure you do, about what was that moment where someone said something to you and you thought, really? Are they saying that to me based on how I look? And would they ask that question? Look at the nods. And would they have asked that question of someone perhaps who was a different race or a different gender? So let's open up, and what we will do here is have a conversation among the four panelists, and then we'll open it up to Q&A with the audience. You know, Shay, you're an alumna of the Women's College, so I'm going to put you on the spot because because I've also had you in class, and I know what an exceptional woman you are. Shay had run for the State House, not the State House, but the State House of Representatives here in Colorado. She's considering a run for the State House. So talk to me first in terms of what you think is the influence and impact of gender and race on the modern political landscape, and what do you think it means to be a woman in politics today? And each of you, as Shay is talking, if there's a point that you want to interact with, feel free to jump in.
Well, I think women specifically having the opportunity to be, run in races, it just gives us a voice, right? Because for so many years we haven't had a voice, and we see it. Well, as you said, the numbers are going down. We're not really getting out there, even though it feels like we're out there. I don't really think that we are. So having a woman's perspective and intertwined with a man's perspective, and how can we make things better, and what are we doing as we're serving people, right? Because when you're in politics, really what you're doing is you're serving people. You're a public servant. You're trying to make things better for who, for those that are coming behind us, for ourselves now. And so the importance of gender and race is that we need to get everybody involved, and women, especially women of color, can be very powerful. It's just that there's this disconnect of how do we bring and how do we influence and how do we encourage women of color to really jump in to something that might seem so big and overwhelming, which it is. Politics, and we see it now all over, and just it's invigorating and it's discouraging all at the same time. It's crazy. So how important is it that we get include gender and race in that, and women of color, men, and how do we all get to the table and make some changes?
Shay, I would agree with what you said in regards to the impact, because if you look across our country, 55% of women are impacting races. I mean, even here in Colorado, with the presidential election, we have a lot of women for president who are running to support the president, but 45% of women in Colorado are those who influence the presidential race in the last 4 years. So I think that's just incredible. While the numbers nationally don't feel big, but I think in small pockets we're doing a lot more, and there's more that we can do. I think in regards to women of color, of course, when you look at the larger numbers, the numbers get smaller with women of color. And I believe that's just simply because we have to do more of what the Women's College is doing, is to support more non-traditional women running for office and showing them the path, because we're caretakers, we're women, and we're the best doers. I mean, you've heard some of the presidential candidates say, if you want something done, elect a woman. And because of our motherly instincts and our ability to get things done, we can have an impact on this country, and I think that we need to continue to support the good work of what the Women's College is doing, and with other organizations.
I agree with that as well. I agree that as women, we, as role models, we've gotten out there, and we've said to women just by leading by example that it's possible. Let's get out there. Let's show them that we really can do this. We do have the strength to stand up to these types of things that come our way. And I think when women, young women especially, when they see us in this role, it encourages them, it inspires them. They think to themselves, wow, I think I can do that too. And so if we can just encourage women, not only by leading by example, but talking with them like we're doing right now, it's there for us. We have the opportunity in one of the greatest nations on earth to be able to do that. And I hope that people look at us and they think, wow, if she can do that, well, absolutely, sure, I can do that. And so I'm hoping that by being in that leadership role, that it encourages other women to come out and do the same thing.
I just want to add one thought. We have a representative democracy in our country, and so at every level of government, it should reflect what the population makeup is, and those are the people who should be making decisions for us. And so that's why those numbers that Dingango lists are so staggering, because if you really think about the percentage of women in terms of the populace, and then you also think about the diversity that we have across our country, you don't see that reflected in our representative democracy. And that's what gets me really focused on that, is because you don't want a few people making decisions for the many who don't understand the many. And that's why we really need to get more involved.
It is amazing to me to think that we do have this representative democracy. So, and yet we have this disconnect in many ways in terms of who we see in leadership roles. And those leadership roles can be the roles each of you hold currently. Those leadership roles could also be the ways in which a young woman or man moves up that ladder into considering the run, getting themselves involved in policy, perhaps being a staffer. I mean, there are all kinds of entry points into this path of elected office. You talked a little bit about what encourages women, and Pauline, when you were talking, I was thinking about the Marian Wright Edelman quote of, you cannot be what you cannot see. And some people say, well, Sally Ride would have said, well, if I'd waited around for a woman astronaut, I might not have done it, right? But, clearly we see here women who are involved in politics. And so having that role model is extremely important, and that's an encouragement. So could you talk a little bit about what you see, all of you, as ways to encourage women, and particularly women of color, to get into policy and politics? And perhaps what discourages them? I mean, we know that they don't always see the diversity that we see here on this panel. So we know that that's a discouragement. But let's first focus on what's encouraging and perhaps what's a little challenging. And I don't know who wants to start.
I think what's encouraging is that, again, this is America, and it is the land of opportunity. And I also believe in Colorado itself, the opportunity is greater for any person, a person of color or a woman, to get involved in politics. And sometimes I believe that we need to encourage other women, because this is basically, it's a man's game. I mean, since this country started, it's been a man's game. And if you look at through the women's suffrage and the right to be able for women to vote, and then you look at the Civil Rights Act, it's taken a long time for our country to move in that direction. But, those who came before us have made the path for us to get involved. And sometimes we need to reflect upon what history has done for us and for us to be here today. And it's incumbent upon us to keep that moving. And because politics it's a tough game. I don't know if many of you have read Nancy Pelosi's book. It's called Know Your Power. And one of the things that was most, that jumped out at me is Nancy said she got up every morning and she ate nails. You got to have that armor on, because you just never know what's going to come at you, but you have to be resilient and stick to your values and believe in that. And as women, I think, we walk our talk, we believe in things that are good for our family and our kids, and we're going to be driven to accomplish that. So I think if we, as leaders, everyone needs a mentor, everyone needs a role model, so that we can help release those fears, but also be a network for women, so that if you get in politics, you're not there by yourself. And I probably would say all of us has had some mentor or a role model who has helped us get into politics. Because just once you get into it, the game's not over. It just continues to build. So I think we have to release some fears and be there for each other.
Mm-hmm. So release some fears, be there for each other. It sounds like mentoring and having some guidance in that. Have any of you, Pauline?
Absolutely. Politics is a tough game, so you do have to have that strength of character. And you also have to have that support system. And I think women can offer each other that support system. But you do have to show resilience. You do have to be, you stand on your principle. And as women, I think that we do that. We do that in our homes. We do that wherever we go. And so when you're in the face of, I mean, you see it on TV all the time right now, especially right now, all the things that can come at you. So as far as, I think we look at those commercials and we think, oh boy, that's really what scares the ordinary citizen from becoming involved. Unfortunately, your entire life becomes an open book. And you have to be strong enough to stand on that. And what encourages me is I've been the kind of person that always likes a challenge. And so what encourages me is having to know that no matter what comes at me, I'm standing on a principle and I'm doing what I think is the right thing to do. And I'm knocking on doors and I'm listening to what people want. We are a representative country. We're not necessarily making decisions for those people, but we're taking what they want to the legislature and we're affecting the change that they want. This is where representation comes into play. We're not necessarily making the decisions for them. We're taking their ideas and we're affecting that change. And when I look back on that and I see that I could actually do that for my community, that is what gives me my encouragement. That's what gives me my strength to stand in the face of, some of that negativity that comes at you.
So having, I mean, it makes me think of being able to put your head down on the pillow at night and say, I did what I believed was the right thing to do. I've stayed with my principles and I have represented my constituents to the best of my ability.
That's it. I've represented my constituents. I've listened to what they said. And I think that's also a little bit of a discouragement as well. I hear a lot of people say, oh, I'm not going to vote because it doesn't make a difference. I want something to happen and it never happens.
How could someone watch the elections that we've been having in the past decade and not think a vote makes a difference?
I mean, I don't mean to take a negative position on it, but sometimes I hear that, my vote doesn't count because they're going to get in there and do whatever they want anyway. It's very important, I believe, for an elected official to keep the promises that they made. That's why they got elected. And the more they don't do that, I think that also discourages people. So I think as women, we're more prone to keeping our promises. Is that okay to say?
I think it's a perfectly okay thing to say, but it sounds like keeping a promise in that kind of an environment is a day-to-day challenge, right? I mean, I'm seeing head nods down here at the other end of the.
I think we go back to the influence, or how do we start? How do we get people encouraged? And it starts right where you're at. It sort of goes back to what you were saying, you said earlier. It's in your little world that you're in right at the time. So as far as going into the political arena, it always started with just looking at my daughters, and how do I make sure my daughters are going to be okay, and what am I going to do for them, and what kind of role model will I be for them, and this is going to be important to them. So we start in our homes, and then in our jobs, right, and in the communities where we're at, and our extended families, which are also sometimes hard to penetrate, right, because they have difference of opinions a lot, and so if we're going back to being the role model, if they don't see us doing those things and getting out there and going to school and working and trying as best as we can, and then jumping into things where the doors open. They open as they are, like you said. We go back to, if I'm going to affect policy, well, right now, if I work in corporate America, where does that happen? So I'm working in regulation and policy and compliance, right? So maybe later on that opens up the door for something else. And then that's how people get involved in that stuff, because then you see where there's disparities, you see where there's inadequacies, and that's where you know you have to make change. And sometimes it's not just that you're out there running for office, it's, well, what happened that made you want to do that? What is it that brought you there? And then what change can you make to influence others that are coming up into you?
So I'm having a moment as a former professor of yours and realizing that, and Shay was in one of my leadership studies classes, and I knew that you had run as a Republican for the House and that it wasn't unsuccessful that run. So could you talk a little bit about, because you just started honing in on you know, the reasons why. Like, so why do we do this? And I'll get back to this whole notion of it's like eating nails every morning, but what, and you talked about your daughters, what compelled you to run? And what was that process like for you?
It was odd. You know, you went back to that moment where you're like, did you really just say that to me? You know, did you ever have that moment? Because well, first of all, I'm Hispanic, right? I'm a Republican. You know, that none of it meshes well with people. And it's just not stereotypical, right? And so I've always, since I was a little girl, always loved politics. I just always wanted to be a lawyer. I'm going to, you know, whatever I'm going to do. And then one day I'm being a housewife with 3 daughters running around, you know, and just started getting curious and researching on the website, like who's running in my state, or not in my house district. And there's nobody running against the incumbent, you know. That's interesting. Just started making calls. I don't even know. It's bizarre. I just started making calls, and all of a sudden I'm running in this election, you know. And so I did meet with at the time state representative, or excuse me, he was the House Majority Leader King at that time in 2004, and I couldn't get through to the Adams County Republican Party. They just seemed very resistant to me. And I'm like, well, why? Just because I'm a Hispanic? Just because I'm a woman? So it's like the opposite, you know, it's almost like what's the word I'm looking for? Almost like a race type thing, but in the opposite way. And so I just made a call, and I said, I want to meet with you. And he was the house. I don't know what I was doing. I was like, oh, this is So we meet for coffee at this little coffee shop on the corner, and he just kind of stares at me for a long time. He said, where did you come from? Like, who are you? Like, he did not believe, honestly, that I could be Hispanic Republican, you know? And it was like, wow, what is so weird about that, you know? And it's just because I was raised in a house with my parents are here, one Democrat, one Republican, and not that I picked sides or anything, but you know, what I really love about my parents is that they've never made me, you know, you have to be on my side, you know, it's kind of like just go and do research, and you do, and you feel what you think is right. And so I wanted to provide that to you. So that was just one of those moments, but then after that, it just went crazy, and I didn't win, but I mean, for not having a name or anything, I did get 46% of votes. So pretty good. So I didn't find it completely unsuccessful, and it was such a learning experience. But my daughters were like, "Don't you ever make me I'm not walking in a parade. I'm not knocking on the door.
Have you shared with them your gubernatorial aspirations?
Yeah, they're both. My 2 oldest girls are in college, and they're like, "Don't even talk about it. We're not going there, Mom." I go, "You'll go there with me one day." So, but yeah. So I mean, I don't know. It just happened for me, you know. But it's because I think it was always there, and I've always, I know I can be a leader. I think because I'm a peacemaker, and I see like in my own home, right? I've got in my whole family, and I've got a couple.
So it's like Mary Madeline and Jim Carville.
Exactly. We're talking about religion and politics, and I'm like the person. You have to see everybody's side. You know, you do have to see everybody's side, and I just have always been like that. So I was always head girl and president and treasurer of my schools and stuff, and it just was always there for me. And I want my daughters to be like that. And one is definitely, my second daughter is definitely like me. She's like, president one day. I'm like, go ahead. You know, take it.
Good. I'd like to see it happen in my lifetime.
And there's, oh yeah, I was like, that's what that was.
As a Hispanic Republican, I'd like to follow up on that a little bit.
Sure. And then I'm going to go to Monisha, because I have questions for Monisha. She's real quiet over there.
But I think I don't want to, not to say that because I'm a Republican, that's critical, but it's just not the norm, right? And to me, I could sit here with you, right, Angela, and our jobs would be to represent people, just like what you said, you know. And if I'm in a community and they elect me, then my responsibility is to take that to the house, right? And you debate and you talk and you think of what's best for everybody, you know. But I think we bring women. I'm a single mom before. We bring a different perspective to the table, right? We don't bring I'm not a wealthy person, so when they say all Republicans are rich, well, really, because I'm not, you know. And so that's like saying all Democrats are this, and it's not fair, you know. So everything's so.
Or all women are this, or all Latinas are this,
so
or all
these
African Americans are
generalizations
this, right? I mean, that's.
It's not always right, and not everybody's nasty and mean or wrong, you know. So I love that I could sit and talk to women of different race, of different color, different religion and political affiliation, and still walk away and have a drink, right? So
Right. Well, and you know, one of the things I'll say before Pauline chimes in, following your comments, is that one of the things that I think we've always known about the women at the congressional level, that there has been this sense of women sort of going and talking to their counterpart, be that a Republican, a Democrat, or independent, right? And going out of the room and actually having the dialogue. And I think the women who serve in elected office at the federal level are known for being able to do that aisle cross in a way that maybe some others have not. So that power of being a woman can elevate the conversation and get us beyond that kind of opposition and just some level of collaboration. Pauline, please, you were going to comment.
Yeah, I don't remember exactly what prompted me to get involved in politics. I just remember one day thinking, aren't we supposed to be living in a self-governing country? And then it dawned on me, I think that means I'm supposed to do something. So I got involved. I was an independent at the time, and I was weighing, it was about 2008, and I was weighing, considering my values. You know, what party should I align myself with? If I'm going to get into a self-governing situation, what party do I align myself with? So I investigated my own values, and my values aligned with the Republican Party. So I started to do my research like you did, and went to, obviously being in Denver, reached out to the Denver Republican Party, and got a completely different response than you did. Did you say Adams? They were like, come on in, you know, we have, you know, these things going on. The party headquarters was a busy place all the time. They were very welcoming. We have all these things going on. I was very surprised to notice all the Republican women organizations that were out there.
Mm-hmm.
And my chairman was very helpful, still is. He's the state party chairman now at this time. And if I leave a message for him, he is responsive to me all the time. But what encouragement I got. And when I decided I wanted to run, because there was no one running against the incumbent, when I decided to run, people sat down with me. The Republican Women's Organization sat and talked with me. This county chairman at the time sat and talked with me, and got me in touch with a lot of people to help me with my campaign. So my experience from the party itself was very positive. I thought, wow, this is going to be really great. How fun. And then you go out there and you start doing it. And I'm like, how did I let him talk me into doing this? But honestly, I had so much help. People were coming from out of the woodwork to help me. And I even had Democrats coming onto my campaign to help me. But the other funny thing that I wanted to mention was, in my district, it's the odds are very much against a Republican. But what I found interesting, and I kind of just went with it, and when I would knock on Republican doors, they'd be like, oh, hey, wow, great, you know, the numbers are so against you, wow, glad to see you're doing this, you know? And then I would get to Democrat doors. I don't want to make this a Democrat-Republican thing, but I'm just following up on the surprise that people get when a Latina knocks on the door, and you say, they go, well, didn't you miss the primary? And, you know, they're just assuming that I'm a Democrat. And I say, no, I'm a Republican. I'm on the Republican ticket. And then you get the, why? There's a moment of silence, surprise, and then the why. And I turned that into a positive. And I said, I am so glad that you asked me why a Latina would be a Republican. And it gave me the opportunity to explain. And it was, that was the positive thing about what I did. And I look back on it, and as hard as it was, and it is exhausting, that's what I remember. The positive, the welcoming that I got from my party, and that's what led me to run to be a vice chair of the Denver County Republican Party as well. And it was welcoming, it was encouraging, it was fun, and then the impact I was able to make when I knocked on those doors. It was very, very successful in my opinion.
I'm Monisha, you know, I'm a lot into this, and I know Angela also has comments to say, so. Monisha, you've run and been a senior regent, and, in this state, that is something we all vote on. And so talk a little bit too about sort of your perspective as you were engaged in campaigning and, because I think we have a couple of threads going here. One is the one I'm not forgetting about the nails. Because at some point I want to talk about how other women look at those of us in positional leadership roles regardless of the sector and say, it's too hard, I don't want to do it. Okay, so let's not forget that one. But we've got one going right now around sort of how we show up and what people expect of us and how that plays out from party lines, from any perspective. I need to invite you into the conversation.
So yeah, in 2008, I became a candidate quite late in the race because the original Democratic candidate dropped out. And so the party approached me to run for University of Colorado Regent for Congressional District 7. And I had no idea what the position was. I had no idea that, people would actually vote for a board member for the university. But, I've been involved in politics for over 20 years. I'm a grassroots volunteer. I have knocked on doors and made phone calls for so many candidates all over this country because I fundamentally just got really excited about the democracy. My parents are from India, which is the world's largest democracy. And, from age 6 onwards, they engaged in conversations at the dinner table about what was going on in the world. And were very much appreciative for the opportunity that they had to live in this country, the freedom of speech that comes with it, and the responsibility that comes with it. And so that was ingrained from day one. Again, my parents are from India, born and raised in Colorado. People didn't know what to make of me. They assume I'm Latina. But so I didn't actually have any ethnic, internally didn't have any ethnic identity questions. It was more about my beliefs and values. And, I was a Democrat when I was conceived, so it's just never changed. So it was really easy. That path was, and I, go and start volunteering on campaigns for those causes. And I'm not a religious person. And so I've moved all over the country. Every new community where I move to, most people go and find their temple or their church or the house of worship. I go find the local Democratic Party. And so there's not a question about whether they welcome me or not. It's I'm here to work, I'm here to participate, I'm gonna start registering voters. And that's just been my MO for all these years. And so when I moved back to Colorado in 2007, that's what I did. I picked my candidate for presidency and I went off and I said, how can I help? How can I volunteer? How can I get organized? And that's how I got known. I showed up everywhere. And Angela remembers this. And so, to campaign for my candidate. And that's how I got known. So when they knew there was going to be 5 weeks before the ballot dropped, it's an unknown race, an unknown candidate, who's going to work really hard to, put forth a strong effort. That's why they approached me. And I ended up winning, beating the incumbent who'd been around for over 3 years. I beat her by 10 points. So.
And so you ran against a woman.
I did, which I think is amazing because that's the ideal situation, right? Is that you have so many candidates out there that you have women running from all parties, at all levels of office, and then that we've really made it because it's not about your gender anymore. It's about what you believe in. It's about your leadership style. It's about how you're going to represent the members of your district. That's what it becomes more about. It's about what you're going to do, what you're going to accomplish, how you're going to listen, how you're going to act.
Yeah, there's a formula out there. I think Shay, we might have talked about it in class called 30% solution. That if you can get at least 30% of women of every type in positional leadership roles, they don't stop being women, but they stop being looked at as just women and start being looked at as that board of director, as that senior leadership member, as that elected official. That there's something about that 30 to 35% tipping point that gets us to the point where we're listening to the issues. So Angela, I know you wanted to jump in, please.
Wow, there's so many great points to answer, and
Right.
It really is. But what I've learned is when women run, women win, and we do. I mean, for whatever it is, whatever traits we have, when we run, we win, and I think the more women we get to running, we'll have more impact. As you talk about the entrance points of where I was listening to Pauline and my colleague here saying they did their homework. Well, I'm a risk taker, and I kind of jumped in at both feet. I just, jumped in. But what helped me get there is that I was in the class of Leadership Denver. And one of my mentors told me, he says, time for you to go into Leadership Denver. You've been serving on boards, you're a business owner. And I was pretty reluctant to do it. I guess I just didn't feel like it was embracing, but he said, you got to do it, because even things like that, the numbers of people of color in those classes aren't that great. And so it was a little bit intimidating, but with some support, I went in. And at the end of that class, I truly realized where all the decisions were being made. And the decisions are being made up here. So when you look at those who are elected and those in power positions, they're making decisions for like all of us right here in this room. They're making decisions that affect our families, those who affect our kids, those that affect communities of color, those that affect the disabled, GLBT communities. And when you hear the cliche, you have to be at the table to have a voice. Our voices are not at the table. And I think Lynn talks to that. And to realize the number of people that you can help when you run for office, or you get active in your communities and you become a leader, because that's what it's about. It's about public service, and you have to have the fire in the belly. We call it passion now, but it's that passion to help those who otherwise don't have that help, or those who don't have a voice. And I just woke up and decided, okay, I have to be there. I have to help represent and be a voice for people of color. I have to be a voice for single parents. I have to be those, just for everyone who doesn't have a voice at the table. And so I jumped in both feet, but didn't know what I was getting into either, as my colleagues here. You wake up one night and you say, oh, what did I get myself into here? But I think it's the drive to the passion and the drive to say, I'm going to do this. And you get that passion to want to help and you want to serve. And I think one of those where you ring the doorbell and you have one of those revelational moments that Pauline spoke of. And I got into the game, and I was the PCP, getting involved with the Democratic Party. I think that's where Monisha and I met. So we ran into each other a lot. But, kind of we got the blessings and things of that nature. And I knocked on a door one evening in my district. And this is a person that I knew in the Democratic Party, like an activist, standing on her lawn, and I would like your support. Would you give me your vote? And what came out of her mouth, I was like, oh no, I don't think I should be doing this, But the comment was, I just hope you're not running on a black ticket. Oh my gosh. I mean, that's what stopped me in my boots. I mean, it really did, because this wasn't a stranger. I think I would have accepted it better if it was a stranger, but it was someone that I knew, and it was a Caucasian woman. I mean, literally, you all wouldn't believe. My mouth dropped, and I thought, I think I better get off the stoop here. And I thought, no, because I will encounter more of this. And it was convincing this woman that, first of all, I'm first an American. Okay, I'm an American. This is a democracy. And I can run, and I will share with this is the conversation with the woman, but I said, I'm an accomplished businesswoman. And I said, do you think I'd be one of the top businesses in Denver, in Colorado Biz, if I was just doing business in a very narrow-minded way? I said, that's not the way I was raised in value. So that was the stopper for me, but it also helped me realize what the perceptions might be out there. Because I was running in a district that's heavily populated with Hispanics and Blacks, but it's a third. But to think that I was only running on a black ticket, I said, I promise you that will not get me elected. Because the game of public service and being a politician, you cannot survive on a race card. And I was so insulted, and I just thanked her and walked off her steps. And I don't know if I got her vote today, but that was a stop in the revelation. But it also shows how we, again, need to be at the table, because all of our issues are the same. I don't care if you're white, black, green, or blue. The issues are the same. It's education, it's healthcare, it's jobs, it's economic development. It's just how it affects our communities are different. And I'd love to hear you all chime in on that also.
I think, as women leaders, the best way to affect the kind of change you were talking about is to just plow right through it. And we have so many women that have come ahead of us who've done just that, busted through those glass ceilings or those invisible fences, and we can't stop. We have to keep doing that. So no matter what you run into, you have to be able to, I guess, chew on those nails and just keep going forward. And some people you can convince, some people you can't. And you kind of have to weigh that out. But I think the theme here, what I'm hearing is hard work and perseverance. Aren't those the most American virtues ever? And nothing stops you. And I think that is where we as women can be role models and leaders. Is my niece, for instance, went walking with me one day, and she's like, I don't know how you can do this. And I said, well, you're going to have to tough it up because you're going to have to do it when I'm done. And we don't stop. We just keep going forward. Because when we go forward and we bust through those things, it gets less over time. I mean, look at where women are now compared to where we used to be. And that's what we need to do as women. We need to be strong and go forward, not just for ourselves, but for those who come after us.
Attitudinally, what the White House Project found in their first study, based on some polling, is that in fact the country is ready for women to be leaders. So that attitudinally, there is this way that this is the time for us to be stepping forward. So reaching back to your niece and saying, when I'm done, you come on up. Ideally, there is then that greater capacity for women to be part and parcel of this representative.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe I got that from my dad. I remember my dad telling me, this is an Hispanic man, and the stereotypical Hispanic man is you keep your wife at home. My dad did not want that for his daughters. My dad said, you can get a job after high school and be self-sufficient if you want, if that's what you want to do. But I would advise you to get a college education so you can be self-sufficient, so that you can be independent. You don't have to rely on anybody. You don't have to rely on a husband, a boyfriend, a parent, government. You can be self-sufficient. And I think that just kind of always sat in the back of my mind. And I used that, I guess, subconsciously as a way to motivate myself to go forward. So.
Parents sound like they play a really important role. They're the early mentors.
So they instill us our values. That's where our value system starts.
I agree with that. Yeah, I owe a lot to my parents. In fact, I'll keep this real brief. I took my husband by the area where I grew up. And he was astonished. He went, oh my God. And I instantly went, well, are you embarrassed? I mean, I grew up very poor. And he said, no, I am so impressed with how far you were able to come. And that came from my dad. That came from my dad not letting me make excuses. He allowed me my time to, feel bad about something, but he was there to encourage me and say it was a mistake or it was a setback, but you go forward. You can acknowledge it and learn from it, but you still have to go forward. And I think we all have that. We may have gotten it different places, or maybe we did get it from our parents, but I think all of us have that inside of us that helps us in those instances when it's hard, but we go forward anyway.
Can I comment something on
Please.
That Representative Williams said earlier about mentors? I think you heard the statistics of the number of women. There still aren't a lot of women there. I've had, throughout my entire political career outside of my parents, I had white male mentors the entire time. And so don't be afraid to reach out to someone who's in that position of power and influence who can give you good advice. It doesn't have to be be a woman. I think we as women do our best to help as many people who can, that we can, who approach us. But you yourself, if there's somebody that you just admire in how he may be governing or doing some sort of policy or how he interacts with the constituents, like reach out to him and, you know, meet him for coffee like Shay did and set that up so that you really hear. Those are the folks who are at the table right now. And so, you know, it's okay to learn from them. And I've been given great advice over my careers from the mentors that I've had. That's what I've had access to, because also as an electrical engineer, I was in that Sally Ride position. There just weren't women for me to even see in those positions. And so I didn't let that stop me. So that's what the advice that I give all of you here is that if there is something that you really want to do, I mean, follow Shay's lead, like call that person who's in that position that you're looking for and how you want to get inside that organization.
That's great advice, because I think all of us have had a variety of mentors, and some of them have looked like us and some of them have not. But I do think that as well-informed women who want to make a difference, we have to look at those around us as resources and to not limit ourselves in thinking about who those resources might be. Shay, you look like you want to say something, and I'm going to open it up to the audience.
I was just gonna say, well, you, when I took that positional leadership course, you guys were, the women's college was putting together a new board. And it was very powerful for me to hear you say, it's open for men too. Nobody ever said that men couldn't be at the women's college, they just don't apply. Well, what's wrong with that, right? So what man wants to apply to women's college? But you said, we have to include men, because that's, if we just, you know, if we exclude men, it's the same way if they exclude us. You know, because they have a different perspective, we have a different perspective, and you said that, and that was really powerful. I mean, so when you go to a women's college or have kids and women all around you, women, you sometimes think, oh, women, forget the men, sorry guys, but I'm just saying, we don't, right? We don't want to do that, you know, because it's powerful and they're strong and they're mentors, like you said, you admire my friend, you know, just those things you can't exclude them. It's powerful to see that.
I was just real quick, I went to an event and I was a speaker and I got up and I said, and it was men and women, and I said, well, we'll be discussing women's issues today. And the men went, and I said, but what are women's issues?
Right.
Jobs in the economy right now, gas prices, grocery prices. Are our kids going to be able to get jobs when they graduate from high school? And the men were like, wow, I wonder what she has to say. It was kind of funny.
And it's true. I mean, I think that, you know, part of what happens when we're in a position of leadership role is that we have impact and influence. And that we can use that impact and influence to create the kinds of institutions and entities that we want to see in the world. And for me, at the Women's College, I want to see men and women engaged with one another around advancing women and girls. I want to see us advancing women and girls of all types, from many classes, from many backgrounds. And I want us to be in conversation about the impact of who we are on boys and men, because we know that the world is a better place by some of the issues that we do raise from the perspective of gender, that really invite us to have a world that is more welcoming and more equitable. So I'd like to now, and thank you, Shay, for that, I'd like to open it up to the audience. We have about 15, 20 minutes, and I'm sure there have been lots of questions percolating out there. Who would like to start? Yes.
Your comment, and I am a woman who's raised 4 children and 12 grandchildren, and I'm also a graduate of the University of Colorado School of Public Affairs just 10 years ago. So a couple comments. I have never felt like just a woman, as your comment was. When I raised my family, I felt that was one of the most important things in the world. So Shay, I liked your comment that we're in this together. And I had 6 brothers and 3 sons. I think some ways it's harder today to be a man than a woman. There are opportunities, we need to go for them. And Angela, when you stated that the constituent was concerned that you would have only Black issues. I've walked many precincts for different candidates, and it's not been just an occasion or two when the literature was torn up in front of me because it was the party that they could not support no matter what, or would not even look at the literature. So be open to both sides, be everything you can be, because the political world and the leadership roles, wherever they are, if that's raising a family, once you have relationships, children are very important. Be involved. It's who gets what, where, when, and why, but be informed. Pauline, in looking at your bio, your values of faith, family, and individual freedom, and I think you also spoke about responsibility. I think wherever we are in life, if that's raising families, which I do consider to be still one of the most important commitments and opportunities in the world, we need to be attentive to what our duties are and to those relationships. In many ways, we can have it all, but in some ways we can't if we are faithful to those ties that bind us. Thank you.
Great, thank you. A question? Yes. Yes.
So earlier this week, I was at the law school at DU for a different debate event about campaign finance and post Citizens United era. And I've also been looking more into ALEC, about state legislators meeting with corporations and things that come out of that. And I guess my question is about how you view the role of corporations and campaign finance, and how we can make sure that people are actually represented, especially people of color and women, when there's all this money coming from entities that aren't really about that, in my opinion. They're not really about having people have a voice who wouldn't otherwise have a voice. They're about making money. So how do you view your role in helping make sure that people are elected and laws get passed that are really for the common good and not for money?
It's interesting that you asked that question, because campaign finance it's so complicated. You know, and the state of Colorado with Amendment 41 has made it even more complicated. But I think you have to have a good balance, because number one, you can't run a race without money. Okay, I think that particularly us as women, as we stick to our values that we talked about, the influence of money does not influence our race and those issues that we represent. And you know, this is on that fine political line of money influencing races. But the majority of women that I have served with, or those that I've met across the country, we're very conscious about not taking money so that someone now can tell us what to do with our vote. And I think you have to have a good balance, because you can't win a race, or you can't be a public servant without campaign donations. Let's just put it that way. I am just very, very sensitive, and when I mentor people, you know, I say, look, you don't have to take every check that is offered to you, because particularly when you get on the floor and you're trying to vote, someone, you know, you feel this obligation that says, okay, well, you know, they donated to my campaign, I've got to vote this way. And I've seen candidates lock themselves down. And so I just think it's important to be conscious and have a good balance on what money you take and what you don't to win. And this kind of goes into fundraising also, because I think that's one of the biggest challenges for women who are running for office is, you know, we're pretty prideful. You know, for those of us who had, like Pauline, who had strong fathers in our lives, you know, we were taught to be strong, independent, make your own money. But when you are running for office, you do have to campaign, and you do have to ask for money. And, you know, that's a whole nother conversation on the fundraising piece. But you need to be able to do that and keep a good balance, and per se, don't let anyone buy you, and stay true to your values. Would anyone else like to comment?
I can make a comment on it real quick. There is a lot of controversy with regard to corporations funding, campaigns, but we have to remember that corporations are funded by individuals. Individuals buy those corporations' stocks. So if you don't want, there's a couple of ways to handle it. Either you reform the tax code so that that doesn't play into it, or you don't buy into the stock of that organization. The other thing you can do is go to the Secretary of State's website and find out what candidates are taking from whom. Because like Angela said, when they do take that money, they are obligated. When you borrow money from people, you're obligated to them. And so they do make it fairly transparent as to see, so that you can see where a candidate is getting their funding. Are they getting it from corporations? Are they getting it from unions? Because when they are standing in the legislature and they are making decisions, is it really based on what you heard at the door from your constituents? Or is it because you got all this money from this particular union and you have to make the decision based on that? So they do make it fairly transparent as to where these candidates get their money. I didn't have that luxury, unfortunately. I made some money. You do have to have money to run a campaign, but I didn't. I chose not to take that funding.
I think the key is, and the beauty of, I think, our next generation and the millennials is that we do have access to so much information and we demand so much transparency via the social media outlets and are comfortable sharing that type of information. It is looking at what that fine print is at the bottom of the ad and communicating that to folks what that really means, because with the super PACs you don't have that type of transparency, so it's going to take a lot more effort on our part to be able to see who is communicating those messages. But the good news, and what I'm optimistic about, is that like, we really are truly committed to like having a healthy election season. That just means that we all have to be a little bit more active in making sure that the candidates that we support, you know, if we need to do due diligence to help fight that money, because that money is hard. I mean, it's really, the amount of money that comes in from outside into Colorado, for example, to influence races is really hard to beat, because it's not interests that match necessarily what we care about here in Colorado. It's because it gets those numbers nationally to what it means in terms of who has the power and control in DC. So it's a lot more work on our side, but we have a lot of tools and ways of communicating that with each other.
Yes. I'd like the panelists to talk a little bit more about mentors and particularly sponsors. You know, who became a sponsor for you? Who taught you how to think strategically and politically and, you know, really drive your career forward? Because I think those invisible fences, people often can't see where the invisible fences are and can only see it with the help of a sponsor in particular. So I'd love to hear, and for you to make visible, for especially the young people in the audience, how to cultivate not just a mentor, but a sponsor.
I'd almost have to say, if I remove the word sponsor, it would be more like my family, right? So my parents and the things that they taught me, you know, and that go forward, hardworking attitude came from way back then. You know, it wasn't just later on in life. But then all along the way, you know, through all the different situations that you go through, and you meet people everywhere you go, right? And it's a job, or it's the University of Denver Women's College, it's somebody along the way at that moment in time that might have been, for me it's been like that, you know. So it might have been at my first job, I had a woman that said, go, you know what I mean, try this. Or the people that I met working at the airport, I used to work at the airport, you know, Shay, you're this type of person, you should be doing this. When I got divorced and started at the women's college, then I became the woman there. Carol is in this house, and she remembers the very day that she was there for me, like one momentous time of my first summer there. And I will always thank her for just saying to me, go in the garden room, get out what you have to do, and come back in and give me your final speech. And that's just it. You know, so it was all these people along the way. Dr. Jones is here, had impact, Dean. It's always someone, but it's right where you're at. Right now in my current position, my director is a woman, she's a Latina woman, you know, and there's several directors in my corporation who are like, you know, hey, we want to bring you in. This is what we want you to start. This is where you're going to go. This is what we see you doing. But so I think for me, it's always just been someone right out of the you know, and just breaking those walls down as you just go through life. I think, you know, situations, people, that's what it's for me. I don't know.
Mine has been similar, but the way I view it now is like a kitchen cabinet, and I've stayed in touch with folks over the years. So there are people who've known me since I was 18 and very interested in this and how I've evolved over time, and kind of remind me back to if I've like forgotten something in terms of my roots or why I wanted to get involved. My parents are part of that, and then other people that I've met along the way who know different dimensions, whether it's through my professional track or through volunteering. If you're really interested in running for office, a great way is to volunteer for a particular candidate that you're really enthusiastic about and get really involved so that you can get to know that person personally. And that person eventually becomes a good mentor and is going to be going through certain things as an elected and serving and can provide you some really special like perspectives and unique perspectives that others can't. But I think it's helpful, like, you know, it takes a village type of mentality, but I think that's why in so many you have boards of directors who advise and why you have a cabinet and you, like I think in every organization has that. I think you're entitled to that as well. And you just have to develop it based on the relationships you have over time.
You know, I want to interject a moment too, because I'm not sure that there's actually an understanding of the difference between mentorship and sponsorship. And so I think that, at least as I understand what's emerging in conversations around this topic, is that there are ways in which many of us mentor. But sponsorship is when I say, Pauline, I've been thinking about who is really the right person for this next spot, whatever that spot is. And then that person makes, am I getting to your question? And then that person says, I'm going to invest, you know, in this person. And it sounds like, Monisha, you may have had that with your run for regent, that someone saw you on the ground, knew that you had really performed, that you were willing to do the work, and either they or a group of they said, we want you to do this. And I think that for women particularly, at least in my experience of observing, is that oftentimes we may not have the way in which we put ourselves out. To be invited to consider a run for an office is a way to get a woman to think about running for office. To think about a board of directors and to say to someone, I would like you to consider a board seat. That invitation often is a way of engaging. And then the sponsorship piece is when you've really got someone or some group of someone in your corner continually saying, you know, Monisha, really, we need to be thinking about Monisha. You know, Monisha Merchant, you know, Shay, that kind of thing where there's a mentoring role in terms of how did you know, so if I ever wanted to run for representative from my district and you were done doing whatever you were doing, I might come to you and say, Representative Williams, tell me how you did it. And then there might be the moment when you say to someone, say in this particular example, the Democratic Party, you know, we really need to consider running for this. That's sponsorship. Is that kind of getting to what you were asking?
Sponsors have power to help you navigate some of those hidden barriers and invisible fences that you might not even be able to see. And they bring you along and sweep you under your wing. And the research shows that women may have mentors, but more often they do not get sponsors. So how do you cultivate a sponsor? Someone with the power to help you navigate the invisible fences and bust through glass ceilings and get into powerful positions yourself.
I think that's where it does call for your homework. And as Monisha said, you know, when we all start running, you create what's called a kitchen cabinet. But as you enter into it at what level and you start volunteering, you know, that's pretty much your network. And then through your network, those people will usually tell you who are the real power players. You know, particularly maybe in Colorado, who are the power players? You know, is that Wellington Webb? Is that Federico Pena? You know, is that Gail Shetler? And I think through your networking, you know, that will lead up to finding that sponsor, because by the time you've gone through the network, you have built some credibility for yourself, and then they open other doors for you. And I think it's just the power of your network and doing some homework to see, you know, who has done this successfully. And I think my colleague said this earlier, just don't be afraid to pick up the phone and ask. I can, you know, quickly I'll share, you know, I was sharing with my sister when I was considering running, you know, I was trying to make sure I was going through the network and see who I could get to support me. But, you know, I was just chatting with my sister one day and she says, well, do you know the Honorable Gloria Tanner? And I said, well, I've heard of her, but no, I don't know her. She says, oh, just pick up the phone and call her. I said, really? She says, yes. And, but I did. And those who are in the political game or in public service, we know how hard it is to run. We know how hard it is to serve. And so I've never had anyone, whether it's a stranger or someone I know, say, no, I won't meet with you. I mean, it's a network. It becomes a family and a lifestyle for you. So don't ever be afraid to expand your network, that someone might turn you down because they won't. It's a game where we have to be here for each other.
I agree with that. I agree that it starts with your own initiative. You have to show that you're willing to do this, that you're willing to educate yourself, that you're willing to help on a particular campaign that you've learned, that type of thing. And then when people see what you have accomplished on your own, they are more than willing to help you and sort of take you under their wing and say, you know, I did this, I did that, I would encourage you to take this step. I'll go ahead and make a phone call for you and introduce you and let this person know, you know, but you do have to show the initiative. And I think once they see that.
I think it's something that you can't go and pick the sponsor. I think that's what we're struggling with. Like, we can pick our mentors, but I think it's really hard, or maybe I just don't know how to do that, so I'll just admit I don't know how to go pick up a sponsor. People approach me that I didn't know, like, to be honest. Like, when stuff happened, I didn't know people knew what I was doing because I was very focused on doing it, not for myself. I was really focused on just getting my candidate elected. And so so I think that's what maybe we're struggling with, to answer your question, because I think the mentorship is something that we've learned how to do well, but I can say I don't know how to pick a sponsor.
So good, so then what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna make sure that you come to the women's college and we start talking about teaching about sponsorship. We unfortunately have to end it a little past 12:15, and I promised that I would end this on time, because for those of you who are going to Fences, that play starts at 1:30 and you need time to have lunch. I will say thank you deeply to the Denver Center for the Performing Arts for allowing us to align this salon with the play Fences. And I think in our last question, we certainly had that metaphor of invisible fences come up, and so thank you for that. Tina Reish has been extraordinary. She's offered tickets to all of us to see this amazing August Wilson play. It really looks at the impact of race on ambition, on families. I want to also join you in thanking our amazing panelists.